Well, hi, welcome back, everyone. So this video, I had to put a lot of things on hold to make this video, but to me it was very important to make. I attended a webinar with the CDC as well as other government health agencies, and they talked about the most current updates that their guidelines that they want to do for 2023. And so I watched this and I looked through, and it gets even worse because then I go in and a friend of mine sends me a link to, what was it? Give me a second, I'll tell you. I need to try and make this quick so I don't... I'm sorry I make such long videos. I don't mean to. I really don't. Yeah. Stanford University. Faith, spirituality, and pain treatment. Basically, this doctor from Stanford University says, oh, well, just believe in a God. My issue with that is that, look, these things have, that's always been an option. That was always allowed. Even before the 2016 guidelines that the CDC made against opioids and opiates, it's always been a thing that if you don't want to take opiates and opioids, the other treatment options that are available were available. You could absolutely, you have the right as the patient, you had the right as the patient to say, you know what, I don't want to take opiates and opioids to manage my pain. I want to do my religious faith stuff instead, which by atheists like myself, we have studied this and looked into it. It's nothing more than a placebo effect, and it only works until it doesn't. So, we live in a secular society. If that's your choice, which I fully support, if that's your choice and that's what you want to do, a lot of atheists, the reason they have a problem with this is because kids get involved. But as an adult, and you're not putting someone else's life in jeopardy over this, it's like if you have pain and you have cancer growing in you that you're unaware of and you just want to go and pray and do faith-based stuff, that's always been an option. Now, a lot of the times that ends up killing people because they find out later that, oh, they have really, really advanced stage cancer, and it ends up killing them because they were going into their spiritual place and praying over and over and over and over and over again, thinking, well, this will help, and it ends up that, they just had cancer that just went undiagnosed and got progressively worse to the point where it couldn't be treated. But there's, other things, like you always had the choice to use acupuncture and chiropractics. You could say, no, I don't want opiates, opioids. I want to do chiropractics. I want to do acupuncture. You also had the choice ever since the inception of other medications such as gabapentinoids, like gabapentin and Lyrica, to use those instead of opiates and opioids if you wanted to. Or other medications in general, like steroids, NSAIDs, acetaminophen, etc. That's always been an option. Always. So, I don't know why when they talk, they make it seem like people were forced against their will to take opiates and opioids. No one does that. Even now, they just took an option away, so they're not forcing gabapentinoids or anything like that on us, but strongly recommend them. And that's great if they work for you, but if they don't, your options are take something that you don't like or doesn't work or makes you just horrible for you, or just live in pain and good luck. That's kind of the options. The thing is that there's risks and benefits to every medication, and it's up to you as the patient to decide which medication or regimen has the benefits that you're seeking for your health condition and has risks that you're willing to tolerate, put up with, and deal with. So anyway, I ran into this video. I'm going to play it for you, and then I'll give you my 2 cents on it. So here's that video now.
Conversely, infectious disease, like something you might get with otitis media, that's very high in younger ages, but then it drops really low in the adolescent teenager years. So it's, we're trying to do some follow-up studies on this, but it's difficult to know what age groups to look at because the data is so different depending on what age groups you look at. And it makes the papers very complex if you show multiple age groups. So we're thinking on our next study. One thing I will point out is that we look at a lot of treatments for chronic pain, this musculoskeletal pain in children. Not unsurprisingly, the highest use of drugs was for NSAIDs or Tylenol in children, but yet in this adolescents teenager group, there was surprisingly high use of opiates. And we, in our paper, we basically said there's no data supporting opiate use for musculoskeletal pain in this population. And that was shocking. And so we definitely want to do a follow-up study looking at trends of opiate use in this adolescent group. And maybe in a few years, we'll be ready to present that.
Great, thank you. So we'll be on the lookout for that. Christina, there were many questions that came in about the new CDC guidelines. And I think a few dealt with how can physicians kind of reset when they've been following the 2016 guidelines. And then there was a comment that CDC did have an excellent training on the 2016 guidelines online. And there's a question, will you be doing the same thing for the new guidelines?
Sure, yeah, thank you for those important questions. So I'll tackle the first one first regarding a reset. And Just to clarify, I'm guessing this is probably a question around how to incorporate the updated guidance from 2022 compared to 2016. What I will say, there are some overarching themes as it relates to chronic pain from the 2016 guideline that still are supported by evidence and were a part of the 2022 CDC guideline. However, there are certain aspects of what was in the 2016 guideline that may have been misapplied or misunderstood and have been rearranged and really elevated in the 2022 clinical practice guideline. And so I think we talk about a reset. I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, but I think the 2022 update really focuses on where the evidence has gone since the 2016 guideline was released, and really trying to do what we can via the guideline to ensure that there's access to effective, safe care for patients with pain. Now, what I will say with regards to trainings, because I think that's a part of that, right? A guideline is just a guideline, but if clinicians and health systems aren't incorporating this into practice and making it a part of their workflow, and it's not actually getting to the part of application and the conversations with patients. And so I think that the educational part that you were speaking to is a part of what we're working on to disseminate the guidance in the 2022 guideline. So there were trainings related to pain on that were released after 2016. If anyone has navigated to our website, perhaps via the link that was posted before, those trainings have been taken down simply because they're being refreshed with more of a focus on the 2022 CDC clinical practice guidelines. So they're coming back. It's just they're in the midst of being updated to reflect the updated guidelines. So what I highlighted during my presentation was the first one that was put out that was really geared towards clinicians and providing an overview of the guideline. But there's more trainings and modules and web content related to other aspects of pain care, including chronic pain intended for clinicians, and also some materials for patients as well to really help them partner with clinicians and be an advocate for their pain care. Thanks for that question.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And then Scott, there were also many questions about helping providers understand when to use codes, how they can use them. So what are CMS's plans for further educating primary care providers on the use of the new codes?
Thank you. That's a great question. So CMS has what's called the Medicare Learning Network that provides educational materials for healthcare practitioners and the public on many of our programs, policies, and initiatives. Currently, CMS is working on the possible creation of some chronic pain management Medicare Learning Network fact sheets and booklets. They'll provide practitioners with information such as the type of practitioners who can provide these services, the elements of the bundled service and the code descriptor and billing tips, et cetera. Additionally, the Medicare administrative contractors, or MACs, the people who administer Medicare for us, have been given instructions to help provide education materials regarding these codes.
Great, thank you. And we are really running down to the wire, but Cindy, the people seem to love your concept of pacing. But we have a question of a lot of people in the audience may have a loved one or being caring for someone who's experienced chronic pain. So do you have any words of wisdoms for all those people, how they can support their loved ones?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, empathy. A little bit of empathy goes a long way. And I would say to the caregiver or the person that is talking about the loved one, think of the worst pain you've ever had and imagine if that just kept going on and on. So, empathy really helps. Also, just carefully observing the cues of the person living with pain, because people often show, like rubbing their side or wherever it is that hurts, and then help them to pace, encourage them to rest when you see them, indicating that they're living in pain. Accompanying them to doctor's appointments is also really helpful, so you can advocate, and then helping them find and research treatments and support groups is what I would recommend.
Great, thank you. And we are at time, but if you want to throw up our last slide, our kind of parting slide on Healthy People Champions, we did have a question from someone in the audience who happens to be a Healthy People Champion. It's the Massage Therapy Foundation, and they actually asked what they could do to help promote the health progress toward the Healthy People objective. So I think the role that Healthy People plays with our national objectives is to give organizations, advocates, whomever, a common goal to strive toward. So if we all work toward reducing chronic pain and incorporate those messages and all the points that we learned today into what we do, we could all, I think, help the nation address this issue in a meaningful way. So with that, I think that's a wrap. I wish we had decided to go longer with this because there's so many more questions that we'd love to get to, but thank you all for joining us, and we'll join you in the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so I have proof that I actually attended the webinar, like certification. I just want to show you that, right? Oh, mirror. How do I? This way. There. Proof. So now I made a essay about this webinar that I saw, and sort of giving my 2 cents, because it's like the only reason doctors can't help chronic pain patients is because they haven't taken these classes that are continuously being updated. I think not. They are relying on our social safety nets and social programs that are not reliable at all for a variety of different reasons, mostly because legislators and senators keep attacking them and doing all kinds of things to them. So that's not a very reliable fallback method. And then, the biggest faux pas is the expectation that everyone in society is going to have to empathize, sympathize, and accommodate people with chronic pain, chronic illness, and ultimately the results in disability or just disabled people in general. And I think that that's vividly unrealistic. And the thing is like we've only seen a model like that in small communities, like communal societies, or back in the 1800s where people lived in small little towns or communities, villages where everyone knew each other, or tribal societies. But the way that we live today with 8 billion people, and the fact that we live in all this infrastructure, and I mean, like, there's been multiple people that have lived across the hall from me, and I don't even know their name and know nothing about them. And the fact is, you know, like, my family doesn't even live near me, and even though they're quite capable of helping me out, they don't. I mean, this is the world that we live in. We don't. It's unreasonable to expect that your friends, family, and community are going to come together and take care of you all, although that sounds very lovely. It sounds nice. I wish it would happen. I don't think that's a very reasonable expectation. I think that that's pretty unrealistic. It's pretty much a fairy tale. It's fantasy. We do have living models of mixed economies, of free market capitalism and socialism, even though, like, I would like to not live under the rule of society or government constantly dictating to me how to live, as long as I'm not hurting other people or creating victims. I think I should be able to do what I want. So I would, you know, that's what I'm talking about is anarchism. I grew up, despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage kind of thing. You know, I know that's, no, it's not going to happen for a multitude of reasons. So as an anarchist, as somebody who's a leftist, what I advocate for is the free market capitalism with socialism, a hybrid economy. Every Western nation does that. The United States is the only Western nation that seems to have our social welfare programs or social safety nets so dysfunctional. And people who are against them, they always bring up, well, in those European countries, yeah, they have those, but they don't have X freedom that we have here. Look, we don't have to do things 100% exactly the way these European countries do. We don't have to mirror them. But we can increase taxes and make it so that these social safety nets, these social programs, function on a much higher level than they currently do. And we absolutely have living models that not only works, but is extremely effective. So here's my essay. I wrote this in regards to the webinar, so the beginning has to do with that. But because the overall message that I want to convey is written in this, I'm just going to read it as is. If you don't want to watch this whopping 8-minute video about government-run agencies talking about how to run healthcare services for those with chronic pain, chronic illness, or disabilities, or if you have watched it but don't really know what it means, then I will just tell you what this is about and what it means. Most of this is in response to taking away, or banning in many instances, the use of certain medications used to treat chronic illnesses and chronic pain that has left people disabled. They are admitting the pullout of opioids or opiate medications, as well as their attacks on other medications such as benzodiazepines, ADHD medications, and in some states they have gone as far to reclassify muscle relaxers and gabapentinoids as Schedule II narcotics. The fallout from this has left many chronic pain patients, chronically ill, and disabled people without any health care. Greater mortality rate, higher rate of homelessness, less functionality, poorer quality of life, and many doctors that were not pill mills but still locked up in prison for the rest of their lives for running pain treatment centers in rural areas. They also bring up that, curiously, even though opioid/opiate prescribing is lower than it has ever been in U.S. history, they are seeing a steep incline of illicit use of opiates amongst the adolescent demographic, to which they have never seen before. They do not understand this because young folks who have musculoskeletal pain are usually prescribed NSAIDs or acetaminophen. They just can't figure out why the rate of illicit opiates in this demographic is higher than it has ever been, when they are not even being exposed to the prescription opiates. That's it. They end that issue just sort of scratching their heads. According to their data, if someone has been exposed to prescription opioids/opiates, these children shouldn't be doing this. According to their data, NSAIDs and Tylenol should be efficient enough pain relief for any and all types of musculoskeletal chronic pain conditions. I won't put words in their mouth or give you my opinion on why that is, even though my opinion would be based on some very good data, medical studies, and other types of studies that have been conducted over the years. I will say that I think I shouldn't have to give anyone that opinion because I think the answer is obvious. Keep in mind, these kids are too young to have ever been exposed to opioids, opiate medications, or crooked marketing strategies by Purdue. They go on to promote something called Healthy People by 2030, which is a government health-based website that advocates for many healthy life practices and choices. One of those things is making sure that the chiropractic industry stays open for customers, not for free, at a charge, to make sure they are accommodating the needs of chronic pain patients. I am not sure why this is said and done, because chiropractic treatment has been available and continues to be. They go on to say, those with loved ones, friends, and family that are chronic pain patients, empathy and sympathy is what is needed most. Quote, many times chronic pain sufferers will try to pretend they are not in pain. If this is your loved one or a friend or family member, make sure to have plenty of empathy and sympathy. Also, pay attention to their body language. If they are rubbing the part of their body that is in pain or making facial expressions, it's important to remind them not to overwork themselves. They need to take time to sit and rest. We need to get society to where we are stopping chronic pain at its roots, end quote. So, what that means is that they expect everyone in society, employers, family, friends, loved ones, complete strangers, the entirety of the health community to accommodate any and all with chronic pain conditions. Disability is not specified, just chronic pain, period. This is their answer, and the CDC is endorsing this on how to treat chronic pain, chronic illness, and disabilities. In the absence of effective treatment being used currently is not discussed, but current effective treatment implies without the use of opioid or opiate medications. Okay, so this is really confusing if you have not been keeping up with this stuff, so let me fill you in on what this means in a deeper sense. As a person who has chronic pain, chronic illness, or a disability, what you are supposed to do is make sure you are regularly attending physical therapy. Cost estimate as much as $3,000 a session and as low as $45 for a wellness checkup that is only 30 minutes. Standard session is 1 hour. Fees vary depending on insurance, what company, or if no insurance at all. Typically, they recommend physical therapy once a week or every other week, although many primary and family care physicians understand once a month to be more practical for low or lack of income individuals. The CDC and Medicare almost demand once a week. You are also supposed to attend a gym and have an active membership. You are to speak to a psychologist for cognitive behavioral therapy or psychotherapy to deal and manage your pain. Costs on this vary widely as well, as much as $200 a session. You are to see a psychiatrist to make sure your psychiatric needs are met with medications for mood management. You are also supposed to attend mindfulness training once a week, which is a fancy name for meditation. You are also supposed to attend either, and this is the only one they give an option on, a chiropractor or get acupuncture done once a week. You are to follow up with your primary or family care physician to stay compliant on your meds, NSAID, Tylenol, muscle relaxers, and then usually one of the following, sometimes combined with one or another thing, but usually one. Tricyclic, SSRI, SNRI, antipsychotic, antidepressant that plays with neuronucleotides like Cymbalta, amitriptyline, nortriptyline, Effexor, Haldol, as some examples. Steroids or gabapentinoids such as gabapentin or pregabalin, also known as Lyrica. You are also supposed to see pain management specialists at least once every other week per CDC for trigger point injections and nerve blocks or ESIs, aka epidural injections. These can cost in a wide range as much as $5,000 for one injection. The lowest I have personally seen is $2,000 for one injection, to which some report as little as 4 hours of pain relief. Some injections patients report only 4 days of pain relief. We are told these are supposed to relieve pain for as long as several months, but really, this is dependent on what condition you have and what is causing it and what type of injection is received for the injection. On top of that, they want to make sure that as a chronic pain patient, chronically ill or disabled, to make sure to keep up with your social life by spending quality time with friends, family, and loved ones. To make sure you are financially secure with either a job or disability/retirement benefits for those who apply. Job is emphasized over social programs. Lastly, to make sure you're eating healthy and getting between 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. This is all per CDC and other government health agencies, including CSMS, for those whom are retired or on retirement benefits. Now, where were we? So, essentially, they want the entire society to let anyone with chronic pain or illness or disabled to be allowed to go at their own pace, allow for late appointments, take breaks, and rest as needed to avoid doing anything that causes or exacerbates chronic pain or illness and disabilities in the first place. They are not doing this as a policy, they are doing this as a guideline, so no company, corporation, business, or any personnel is held to this by any legal measure. Once again, I could insert my own take on this based on pretty solid evidence, but I think this is unnecessary, as it should be obvious what the outcome of this will actually look like. I'll ask this simple question. Do you see an employer doing any of this for a customer or employee? Do you see all these different healthcare agencies accommodating to all of their patients being late due to being slow and thus not punctual for this menagerie of different healthcare specialties? The government health agencies want us to attend. The CDC seriously pushes for all, not just a couple, but all listed health specialties, and the other government healthcare agencies agree without question. They go on to talk about how they think the reasons doctors feel so pressured by the CDC, DOJ, and DEA in the helping of managing chronic pain or illness and disabilities is nothing more than they have not attended the CDC's seminars, which are being updated for the 4th time in this single year. They say that doctors need to take time to understand and have deep conversations and understand their patients' needs. The doctors need to be there for patients when in need of social rehabilitation and assistance, such as obtaining a caseworker, social worker, or disability, which, if you've been in this situation, you know they will not do due to health insurance regulations, government interference, regulation, or policy enforced by the company they work for or affiliated hospital, shortage on doctors due to COVID, and arresting so many for prescribing meds health practices and administrations that run health offices running on a profit-based model that basically demands that each patient visit only be 15 minutes to maximize the number of patients seen in 1 hour, and legal issues in which many expert witnesses, colleges, and other entities have sued doctors over the prospect of money which results in the termination of their job and license. Nope, none of the currently being updated again to ensure that doctors are staying compliant with the guidelines that are an unreasonable expectation at best and consistently changing. As one of the panelists says, quote, "After all, these are not policies, they are guidelines. And if no one knows how to work within those guidelines because they haven't taken the seminars, they won't know how to implement them." We are really struggling with this one because when we passed the opiate prescribing guidelines for 2022, they were very strict, and many states independently adopted these guidelines into law and policy that are different from state to state, but pretty much all do the same thing. We never intended them to be laws and policies, but merely guidelines. When we released the 2023 opiate prescribing guidelines, we went back to the less strict guidelines resembling that of 2016 opiate prescribing guidelines, where the MME, morphine milligram equivalent, count was at 90 MME instead of 50 MME. We have seen no change in state accordance, end quote. These people act like our social safety nets are as accessible as over-the-counter ibuprofen, when in fact they are almost as accessible as the opioids/opiates they sought out to completely ban and obliterate out of our society, regardless of the consequences this has had on healthcare providers and the chronic pain, illness, and disabled people they were used to give back quality of life, pain relief, and functionality. Andrew Kolodny, one of the chief panel members that created the 26 opiate prescribing guidelines, said, quote, "An entire generation needs to die in order for people to see my greatness." I don't think he meant to quote Hitler, but that is something Hitler did say. Astonishingly, Hitler also took opiate pain meds away from the chronically ill or in pain and disabled. Hitler also promoted euthanasia as a quote-unquote humane and ethical way of helping those suffering to die with dignity. It wasn't until later people found out he wasn't just euthanizing people who were in end-of-life care, or lack thereof, due to no opiates given to the general public, and only administered to his inner circle, as a humane and ethical way of dying with dignity. He was just killing everyone who had any kind of chronic pain, chronic illness, disability, and that includes mental disabilities as well. Back on topic, the fact of the matter is, our social safety nets, social rehabilitative services, SRS, like the SSA, food stamps, financial assistance, and on, have been slowly having their funding cut, and certain facets of it being privatized over the years. The past 10 years, we have seen the most cuts and privatization of these programs than any other time in U.S. history since their inception by FDR. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, has not only been red-taped, but it is outdated. One of the reasons why you may have had your disability case denied is because the judge that decides on your case confirms the local job market with a job coach or vocational rehab specialist. The judge looks at your limitations and asks, based on this person's limitations, education, and experience, are there jobs in the local area this person can do, and how likely is it that they can get one of these jobs? The career specialist is financially incentivized to find a reason to deny a disability case for one. Two, they don't have to go off of what the current job market economy looks like. They only have to go off what it looked like since the ADA was last updated, which was back in the 90s. The career specialist is absolutely reciting jobs that no longer exist and haven't existed since the late 90s or early 2000s, and completely ignores the fact that things like pre-COVID door greeters are a thing of the past. They ignore the fact that job codes and other nifty legal loophole language in job applications specifically designed to get around the ADA exists. They completely ignore the vast majority of the Republican Party representatives have deregulated capitalism to the point of crony capitalism in the name of free market capitalism, give the employer the freedom to hire who they want, and decide for themselves what is or is not a quote-unquote reasonable accommodation. This is so much to the point of government protections. I spoke with a disability discrimination attorney who said, quote, "The big corporations have got so much government protection and have been deregulated to the point I cannot even do my job. Many disability discrimination lawyers have changed their title or quit. There is no certainty or guarantee that anyone can hold a company accountable for disability discrimination anymore. To top all that off, there are many company-owned healthcare facilities, although this is not federally or state mandatory, have created policies where they are no longer taking private payers, people without health insurance. Some states are requiring each person who is disabled to reapply for disability every year. Some states require that a person cannot be on disability for more than 5 years, regardless of their disability status. The state of Pennsylvania, to my understanding, has moved the retirement age up to 66, and the District of Columbia to age 67. Some have considered even higher, all the way up to age 71. Many states have cut food stamp spending or almost cut them altogether, to where many people who have been on food stamps for years have had their food stamps taken away from them entirely. In the state I reside in, I was denied Medicaid due to the fact that, while he is my fiancé, we are not legally married. And as far as they know, he is nothing but a roommate. They denied my Medicaid claim because for a two-person household, regardless of the relationship that person holds with you, one cannot make over the amount of $24,000 a year. I guess that is an acceptable amount for two people, even when the money being made that is over $24,000 is not the person claiming Medicaid, but someone else's hard-earned money. The mantra of the very conservative and traditionalist government when it comes to our social safety nets is one that would take us all the way back to the 1800s. Absent of major infrastructure where we all live in small communities and everyone knew each other, they think it is the job of your friends, family, and community to take care of you, and not the government, to which anyone who has worked has paid taxes to support. The CDC and other government health agencies have made a catastrophe, as the systems they are relying on are outdated, defunded, and privatized. It is a system that essentially funnels people into homelessness, and is one of the contributing factors as to why our homeless population continues to rise at what should be seen as at an alarming rate, which has led to outbreaks of diseases we have not seen since the 1800s, like tuberculosis and cholera, due to all the human feces on the sidewalks and streets. I have been saying, it is a highly unsustainable system for the Democrats to pretend they are the only party. Take away pain meds, which are the cheapest pain management regimen and the most effective, with limited risks comparatively, especially for those whom are disabled due to chronic pain and chronic illness, and most likely to be unemployed or on disability. To take away opioid/opiate medications, act like they have the power to give all of us untreated disabled patients with chronic pain and illness unfettered access to social programs when they do not have the ability to do this, as every bill in the Senate and Congress put forward to do so is blocked, filibustered, or expelled by the Republican Party. Along with that, any progress that is made is undone on the state level, where some states have redirected their social welfare funds to other entities like private home communities and private schools, claiming, quote, it stops early pregnancies and facilitates fiscal responsibilities, which helps homeless rates decline, end quote. Even though many chronic pain and chronic illnesses cannot be helped or are caused by overworking, then the Republican Party red tapes, defunds, and privatizes our social programs. Then the Republican Party deregulates the market to where you cannot even hold a company accountable to nearly any laws at all. This is a system that is very dysfunctional, as one is not guaranteed disability income, healthcare, financial assistance, pain medication, employment, and even if you do get employment, there's no guarantee they have to do anything to accommodate your disability or health needs, aside from allowing a person an inhaler for asthma or to make sure they can take their insulin during lunch. The CDC and the government health agencies that follow them blindly pretend that none of that is even ever an issue. In the webinar, they even make claims that suggest if everyone just lives as healthy as they possibly can, then no one would ever develop any underlying health condition. I hate to be the arbiter of truth, but that is simply not true. That's me being nice. It's BS with a capital B, and we all know it. I don't know how we went from a society that understood snake oil pushers are everywhere, snake oil pushers are everywhere, to a society that might as well be saying we should live like the boy in the plastic bubble. Bubble or not, the reality is we grow old, we fall apart, and we eventually will die. You can live your life as healthy as humanly possible, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it will not stop anyone from growing old and dying, nor will it stop all chronic pain or illness resulting in disability. Many of these things can be obtained genetically. Many are from dangerous work environments that are physically intensive, manual labor, or repetitive, and being overworked. 70-hour work weeks are becoming the norm. Many times, it is a combination of genetics and labor. Being as healthy as you can by including, this is a real thing, wearing SPF lotion inside can be helpful and lower risks, but they are not a deterrent. We are incapable at this time of not only offering a suitable replacement for opioids/opiate medications, but we are also incapable at this point in time of having a society completely free of underlying health conditions such as chronic pain or chronic illness and disability, especially one where no one grows old and dies. One could easily argue we may never see such an existence, as it may not even be possible. My final thought on all this is that I really don't care what kind of guidelines the CDC makes and other health agencies. Even if they make them into policy, how are they going to get an entire society and everything in it to accommodate, not even all, chronic pain or ill, disabled people? people you don't even know with so many conditions that cannot even be seen as they are internal. How is that even possible? Is that even possible? Or is this nothing more than fantasy or a pipe dream? I know many people try their best, and most have empathy and sympathy, but we can't even get what we already have to work in the favor of chronic pain or illness and disabilities to work now. Although many full able-bodied people have the best intentions, they have things going on in their life, such as maintaining a sleep cycle, a social life, and many of the above-mentioned prescriptions given to chronic pain and illness people or those with disabilities by the CDC themselves. As the saying goes, there's only so much time in a day, and well, there's only so many years to a life. Let us not deny the cold reality. Taking care of a full-grown adult with a chronic pain condition, chronic illness, and disabilities is very arduous and taxing, and most don't have the time or energy to take care of every chronic pain or chronic illness disabled person for the 24/7 needs they may have. Let us also not pretend that everyone out there has it in them to be the Good Samaritan, especially multi-conglomerate corporations who hold a for-profit model, even if it is at the expense of another's well-being, or life. And in this day and age, the cost of our own society, they will profit off of the cost of our own society, is what I've been seeing. There are many that will not engage with this, cut corners, do the bare minimum, or just flat out not do it. They could be doctors, police, they could be anyone within this society. Ultimately, it is a standard that cannot even be enforced, and won't. And I can pretty much guarantee that. This is the CDC's proposal of what to do since they took our pain meds away and chronic pain patient suicide rates have gone up 400%. They did this with no backup plan, and since chronic pain patients and the chronically ill and disabled have had their healthcare turned into a joke with no resources to help, taking away pain meds has also not caused a drop in the use and overdose of illicit opiates/opioids. It's gotten worse as many who seek their medical benefits take to the streets and become another number. The CDC members responsible for this just sit around scratching their heads like this couldn't possibly be due to the fact that they took away a safe supply, leaving the entire population of society with either an illicit contaminated supply or the worst opioids or opiates possible, which is buprenorphine, Suboxone, and methadone. Regardless, if one is a recreational user or someone who needs them to function as close to a resemblance of their old life as possible for medical reasons, basically an entire rehash of prohibition and or the lead up to Nazi-occupied Germany, as if we have collective amnesia and haven't learned anything in the last 100 years at all. All right, well, I'm glad you listened to my essay. Hopefully, I made some points for you to consider and to think about. And I also want to tell you that I will leave a lot of links in the description to various pieces of information and citation to much of what I was talking about. A lot of what I was talking about. Actually, there's things that I didn't even discuss, but it certainly backs up the point that what I'm saying about our social safety nets is, well, very, very, very true. The other thing is that what I found really ironic, I posted that essay in the chronic pain subreddit group, and it's supposed to be a place, for people who have chronic pain that are debilitated by their chronic pain conditions. One of the things that makes it hard for me to type is my condition. If I sit at the keyboard for 15 minutes typing, I end up walking away feeling like I've been shot in the chest with buckshot. So typing for me is very, very difficult, and then what gets even more difficult after typing all that is trying to respond by texting and messaging people. And the thing is a lot of people came out to downvote it, saying, oh, this is a huge wall of text. Basically, people telling me, I don't want to have to read more than 3 sentences. And that really disturbs me that's where our society is that, reading is booby work. We don't like to read. That kind of lowers my faith in humanity just a little. So they don't like to read. But another complaint was that, oh, there's no paragraphs. And I was pretty much like, well, look, I put paragraphs when I wrote it in Word, and I copied and pasted it, and the paragraphs are gone. Don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to fix it. There are plenty of typos and stuff in there. I'm not going to fix it. I already put myself in a heaping wad of pain typing that. I had to take many, many breaks to type that. That was an all-day event just to type out that essay. It was difficult. I think it was about 5 pages, something like that. But somebody pointed out that, they're like, I don't understand. This is a place for people who are chronic pain patients with chronic illness conditions and who are debilitated or disabled, and this is where we're supposed to be able to go and talk freely and openly and sort of a safe space about it without being mocked. And people who are chronic pain patients or have chronic illness or are disabled in their own various types of ways are pretty much, being rude to you and not being considerate of your disability and accommodating and empathizing and sympathizing. And so then I want to show the screenshot of this conversation because ironically, they invariably proved my point that the CDC saying and other government health organizations saying that society as a whole needs to just accommodate everybody and have empathy and sympathy isn't going to work, because if people in the chronic pain community or people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, if we can't have empathy and sympathy for each other to accommodate each other, what leads me to believe that society as a whole is going to do it? So they don't want to treat us with pain meds. They just want to make sure that everyone is empathetic and sympathetic to the troubles and trials of chronic pain, chronic illness, and disability. But you can't even get people who are chronic pain patients, chronically ill patients, and people with disabilities to empathize and sympathize and accommodate each other. So that's kind of ironic, and it invariably proves my point right then and there. So this is what it says. So I put in there, I copied and pasted it from Word. It had paragraphs, and they aren't here. I can't type for more than 15 minutes at a time, so sorry about that. And then this person responds to me by saying, thank you for doing it anyway. I can't believe that you are getting downvoted and aren't getting thanks and sympathy for the fact that you did your best to inform people of the issue in a sub about chronic pain that largely discusses how difficult it is for all of us when we can't perform our best all the time, and we wish the world would be more understanding. And then my response, isn't that ironic? You'd think people would be more forgiving of limitations. That's actually kind of what the CDC was saying their new policy is. This is living evidence. It won't work. Yeah. And there were people that were asking for citations. The video that I showed you guys here was supposed to upload with that essay, and for some reason it didn't. And so if I make a new post and upload the video, then it won't be attached to the essay and it'll just be there. So I don't know what to do about that. So I'm making this video. I'm trying to get out to as many people as possible. People need to be aware of this stuff. People should be outraged. I mean, we're not talking about legislations on our, I mean, as much as I'm anti-prohibition, talking about doing something about an illicit supply of drugs, of an illicit substance. I mean, you can do that all day. I don't have a problem with that. That's cool. We can talk about harm reduction shit. That's cool. But they're banning medications, our medications that people rely on to function, to fit into society, to be able to increase their quality of life, increase their functionality, and relieve pain. And now they're attacking benzodiazepines and ADHD medications. So now they're attacking medications for that. So like I have generalized panic and anxiety. If they take my benzodiazepines away, I'm probably going to go back to having 5 panic attacks a day. And, on top of that, being a chronic pain patient, and then on top of that, not having access to any help. And I'll tell you on a personal story, like where I live, there's a company that bought out a major hospital. Then they bought out like all these private practices within a 30-mile radius. They even bought out like several hospitals. The only things that they didn't buy out were other major conglomerate corporate ran hospitals. And they also didn't touch the local medical school hospitals and practices. But they bought everything else out. And even though it's not federal or state policy, it is of this company's policy. They bought all this stuff out that they are no longer taking private payers. So you can't get treatment unless you have insurance. Now, I've applied for Medicaid, and, well, they're very specific about this. I mean, they go as far as to say, do you live with somebody who's 16 years old, a minor? Do they work? What's their income? What's a 16-year-old's income? So, like, if for some weird reason, which I would never do this, I'm not really a big fan of kids and teenagers. That's why I don't really want kids. I don't really have the patience for it. But, if they made, if it was just me and them, this is a supposed 16-year-old, if they made over $26,000 a year, which is not hard to do, especially, McDonald's is hiring people in at $11, $12 an hour, I'm not eligible for Medicaid. And there's a lot of programs that I can't have access to without Medicaid, which includes having somebody come over and helping do things around the house, like cleaning, getting ready, filling out applications for disability, so on and so forth. So another thing is that there's another program where, since I live with my fiance, if I got Medicaid, they would be able to actually pay him for the things that he does to financially and physically support me. So they didn't actually pay him to do this. Can't get any of that without Medicaid. So the thing is like I went in for a routine checkup and I couldn't even get it done because I don't have insurance. But I haven't been able to find employment, to find an employer to accommodate me or anything like that. I've been unemployed since November. The last time I worked was November 20th or November 21st of 2021. I pretty much haven't worked in 2 years. And I don't think it's very reasonable to say that, well, you know, in order to get healthcare of any kind beyond the ER would be to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, and get private insurance with a pre-existing condition like I have at my age. For somebody who doesn't work, the price of that, the cost of that would be unreasonable. It's not practical. It's not something that really could be done. And so like I just don't get healthcare then. None. At all. Whatsoever. Even if I can pay out of pocket, they won't let me. That's messed up. That's really messed up. That is so messed up. But that's, you know, what these policies do. You know, congratulations if you're against social safety nets, social programs, whatnot. Congratulations, you're winning. You won. And it's having a very devastating effect. Basically created a system that's funneling people into homelessness. And the only reason I have become homeless is because of my fiance. If it weren't for him, I would have been homeless by now. So this is all very frightening. It's very scary, and it's messing up people's lives. And the fact of the matter is on top of all that, I can't even get access to my pain meds, and it looks like they're going to take away my anti-anxiety meds too. Fantastic. And the answer the CDC has to that is, well, you know, society is just, you know, going to accommodate you. Random strangers and stuff. They'll help you with your panic attacks. They'll help you deal with your pain, let you rest when you need to rest. I don't buy that. I don't buy it. We don't live in the 1800s in small little towns and communities where everybody knows each other. This is not plausible. It's not. You need to stop attacking our meds. You need to stop. This has got to stop. It's unsustainable. You know, like I said in my essay, the Democrats sit there and pretend like that they run the entire show, even though every bill that they've put forward to expand our social safety nets gets shot down by the Republican Party. They act like we just have unfettered access. Like, oh, you're disabled. You have a dash score. You have all these medical evidence, medical papers. Then, you know, you're just going to get it. No, that's not true. You haven't worked and you don't have insurance. Well, then you should just get Medicaid. Well, no, that you don't. You're not guaranteed any of that. You're not going to guarantee accommodations. The ADA is outdated. It's based off of the workforce or job market economy, and you know the jobs that were available from back in the 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s, would have been the last time that the ADA regulations would have been accurate. So no, a lot of these employers have changed their job codes and have demanded, as wages have gone up, they have demanded that like, okay, we'll pay you $11 an hour, but they're still going to make their labor percent. And how they do that is they cut their labor hours. So now during a $500 hour at McDonald's, you know, you would typically want between 8 to 12 employees behind the counter. Now that they've raised their wage to $11, $13 an hour, now during a $500 hour, you probably only see like maybe 5, 6 people behind the counter. So they need people to be able to multitask and not just do one thing. No, you can't just hand bags out the window anymore as an accommodation. No, you can't just take orders at the front register as an accommodation and part-time and all that. They need people that can do multiple things. And that's very inconvenient for people who are chronic pain patients, people with chronic illnesses, people who are generally just disabled. And another thing that's also changed is time off. Like I've looked at customer service answering phone. They want keystrokes per minute met. I can't guarantee that. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, one of the reasons why call centers can't accommodate me is because they only allow you to have 5 days off a year. That's it. That's your vacation and your sick time. Everything. 5 days. That's it. And so when you have a condition where you might need to take a lot of time off, well, they say we can't accommodate that. Sorry. So no, Democrats, you don't have this level of access to the social safety nets. You're not in charge of everything. You share the White House with other political parties and affiliates, and they're not 100% with those things. And anything that does get passed on the state level, it gets debauched. So like in California, if I lived in California, I would probably have food stamps and disability or some other sort of assistance. But since I don't have access to it because on the state level, they operate it differently. So no, social safety nets are not the answer. At least not currently. We would have to fix our social safety nets so that they actually worked to be able to do that. And then the whole society, like everybody just sort of taking care of each other thing, that sounds like a very lovely idea, that everybody would be so respectful of each other to be nice enough to take care of everyone within the society. The fact of the matter is you've got people running around out there with like an armament trying to hurt people just for the sake because they don't like them. Like LGBTQ people. They want to hurt us because we're LGBTQ and nothing more. They think we're trying to take over the world and destroy society, and no, we're not. In fact, I've never heard of the Homo Global Agenda. I've never heard of that. It's the only people I've ever heard that from are very far right-wing individuals. That's it. First time I heard it, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't hold secret meetings where we're like, how do we turn all these people gay? As far as anyone that I've ever met that's homosexual, even straight, pretty much universal understanding sexual attraction is involuntary, and it's not something that you can learn. I mean, I grew up, and every gay guy, every LGBTQ person I know, we all grew up in a heterosexual-based society, and when I was growing up, like, it wasn't even talked about, and deeply, deeply discouraged. So no, it's not something you learn. I can't learn to be straight, nor can you learn to be LGBTQ anything. You don't learn that stuff. You either are or you're not, So, but the point is that we don't live in a society, and that's why anarchy won't work. That's why I had to grow up and was like, anarchy won't work, because somewhere out there's somebody who got cut off in traffic last week, and if we just had anarchy tomorrow, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to go get that guy that cut me off last week. People like that exist. We don't live in a utopian dream. We live in reality. I like the idea of creating an anti-Darwinian society. In order to do that, we need social security safety nets. We need a mixed economy of free market capitalism and socialism. And I haven't seen a whole lot of true free market capitalism. A lot of what's being advocated for in the name of free market capitalism is crony capitalism. So, I'm not trying to give leftists slant. I think I'm being pretty straightforward and blunt and being pretty unbiased about all this stuff. But let me know what you think in the comments section. Like, share, subscribe. And that I'm out.